As you may already know, I live in Vienna, but I'm going to do a business trip to Budapest. That city I've already visited before. So, besides meeting my friend Nikki and working, I'm not so sure what else I could do. Except for brewing an entirely new deck. So, I guess it's time to go! So, I just arrived to Budapest. I just happened to dodge an incredibly big thunderstorm, but I left it back in Vienna, so I guess weather should be really nice in Budapest today, and for the rest of the week as well. Home sweet home. Whew, so guys, I finally arrived to the hotel. It's been a trip around 4 hours long and I'm all sweaty. It's so bad. So I guess the first thing I will do before going to bed, because it's around 9 in the evening, is to just go have a shower and relax before my working day tomorrow. This means I will continue working on the script and on the deck since tomorrow afternoon, tomorrow evening, so I will keep you posted. See you tomorrow! Well, I guess I didn't dodge the thunderstorm after all. Alright, so this is the second day of my trip to Budapest and I am with Nikki.
Hi!
I managed to meet her after work and we are here to visit the Parliament, which is my favorite building. As you can see, it's very windy, so I don't even know if I'm going to be able to record this without a lot of windy noises. But anyway, these are the problems. The first day it was the rain and the thunderstorms. The second day is nice weather but a lot of air. So let's see how this is going to work. By the way, Nikki, why don't you play Magic?
Not again.
Okay. The beauty that got me thinking about brewing a black deck was Water Command. This card can be devastating against mid-range or control. I honestly have no idea why nobody is playing it at all. I know, everybody's hyped the first time they read this card. Then they get disappointed when they discover that there are workarounds to neutralize it. But let's be frank about 2 points. First, if the card did everything we were hyped about, it would be so OP that it would be immediately restricted or banned. Second, the card is strong, even with those workarounds. Its only flaw is that it's kind of situational, so it requires quite a bit of patience to seize its full potential. Change of perspective. And now for my last magic trick, I will make Nick disappear. Change of perspective. Now the best is, because I'm doing cuts, people behind is going to disappear and appear, you know? So I wanted to build a deck that can sit peacefully for as long as it needs, so it can play Word of Command to its fullest. This reduces my choices to basically one option: Control. And that's totally fine, because I love Control. Control games are longer, mental battles happen more often, there is the need to plan ahead, and making decisions is fun. But if I'm going to brew a Control deck, it should be at least as good as the deck. Okay guys, stakes are high right now. However, if I'm going to create a deck as good as the deck, why not make it better? Stakes are really high. What does this mean that it should be better than the deck? For me, this means that it should accomplish the same goals, while overall having fewer weaknesses. Yes, Blood Moon, get out of there. Because I will only accept up to a 2-color combination, so I can play a ton of basics. This will also give me the opportunity to show that a deck doesn't need the full power 9 in order to be competitive. Wanna see how the deck that beats the deck looks like? Stick around. Word of Command is an incredibly disruptive card. The more you play it, the more you realize it. It's so good, I should literally make an inside video about it. What do you think? Should I do it? Let me know in the comments below if I should do it. Word of Command has its disadvantages, like people walking behind me. Word of Command has its disadvantages. It costs double black. Opponents may react to it. This forces an awkward situation where your opponent literally fires anything they can, so you don't do it for them in your own benefit. And opponents that have dual lands can tap them in response, choosing the wrong color combinations, so you cannot cast any spell when it resolves. But Word of Command has also its advantages. It reveals your opponent's hand, exposing any plan they may have, and giving you clear intel on whether you can fulfill your own plan. Another advantage is that it completely wrecks our opponent's plan to keep that counterspell up or hold on to that time walk for a better turn. It also could give you a 2-for-1, for example, Swords to Plowshares targeting their own creature, or Disenchant targeting their own artifact or enchantment before you get to deploy your first one. Also, you can fish out a counterspell out of their hand. Even if the opponent fires up every interesting card they have in their hand, or taps out to prevent you from using them, they will be tapped out and they won't be able to respond to your big threat in the next turn.
Is this an interesting card?
Yes, and the most important of all advantages, if they know you play it, it messes up with their minds. They will feel pressured literally the whole time. Isn't it awesome? I already hate this deck more than the deck. My job is finished here. Change of perspective. Okay, wait a second. I forgot the line that I wanted to say this. The deck is black, and I would like to add another color to it. If that color is blue, 3 things will happen. First, we become vulnerable to Red Elemental Blast, and we wanted to reduce the deck's weaknesses, remember? Second, it reduces the chances to interact with our opponent's cards down to the usual 5. 4 counterspell and the 1-off mana drain. This is not much, considering that black also lacks effective ways to remove certain permanents. Third,
oh, you're playing blue. Blue is OP. You're so mainstream.
Those who were thinking that, I know you were crying already. Thank you. Alright, no blue.
Right.
But not because you say so, but because I don't want to. To be honest, I have almost always played blue. And as a challenge, I would like to play a fully competitive deck that doesn't have it. So, no blue. This means that every single thing that the opponent does will resolve. So we need a very good way to get rid of permanents. Yes, we are looking at you, white color. White has the most effective and efficient package in old school for permanent removal. Swords to Plowshares, Disenchant, and Divine Offering. You can even add balance to that for desperate situations. And just imagine adding to the sideboard cards like Modes and Wrath of God. Enough to send creature decks directly to the therapist. Change of perspective! Actually, I was thinking that even if I come here to work, and I should actually try the food of Budapest.
Of course you should.
Even though I've already been here many times, but which would be the 2 best kinds of food that you would recommend me?
Kurtos kalács.
What is that?
Chimney cake. That's
Okay.
a dessert.
What? I actually never tried that before. You never asked me to eat this. Okay, what about langosh?
And langosh.
Okay.
That will be the other one because I've just seen it and I want to eat it now.
Okay, so later we make a stop to grab some langosh.
But
You
we
will get
didn't
to see
have
what
the-
it is.
We didn't have the food because we were only drinking, so you know. That makes sense.
Nice! That makes sense. Okay, next stop, langosh. On second thought, sending creature decks to the therapist is not enough. We need to do more. We need to forward them directly to the asylum. Enter Mesafith. It's super cool. It says, enter Mesafith.
Oh, yeah.
Nice, huh?
Very nice.
Without the draw effects that the color blue provides, we need to pump up that consistency drawing creature removals. And when it comes to a sneaky card that can deal with creatures, Mesafith takes the crown. Mesafith is by far the most brutal card in control shells versus creatures. The card is literally overpowered. It costs a land drop to bring to the battlefield, which means that it cannot be countered. It can be only destroyed by land destruction, which is not very present in Swedish except for mono black sinkhole. Otherwise, we are talking about the usual must-have one-off strip mine and chaos warp. Mesafith can be used every single turn, and it can target any creature. Sick. How many copies of Mesafith would you ask? We mentioned the words asylum and sick. You already know the answer. A full playset! So how do we ensure that this deck wins as consistently as the deck? We need to draw.
No. No. No.
Yes, we need to draw. Okay, so we promised to eat langosh and here it is. Nice. Nice one. So, guten Appetit. The deck uses Ancestor Rico and Brine Geyser. There is nothing we can have that resembles that, not even by far. And we cannot have Time Twister or Wheel of Fortune either. So we're down to two interesting options, Giant Diatome and Grid. The Giant Diatome pick would be very straightforward, since the deck is playing 3 copies of it, and it's literally its mid-game draw engine. But this would require a big mana commitment, and I would like this deck to be less mana hungry than the deck. Remember about the weaknesses? Grid requires a much smaller mana commitment, and it can be activated several times per turn. But it costs us 2 life points per activation. It's only intuitive that we combine it with a shell that gains life regularly. This brings us to Ivory Tower. I have played the Grid and Ivory Tower combination in the deck, since I can bring it from the sideboard in certain matchups. And I must say I was so impressed by it. So this is exactly what I want for this deck, but this time I'm going all in. 4 Ivory Towers. Why, you say? For several reasons. It works wonders just by itself, buying us time until we draw the right cards. It cancels Black Vices, which are not very present in my meta, but when they show up, oh boy, does it help to have them around. It prevents the Channel Fireball combo, granting you more life points than the opponent. It annoys the hell out of burn cards and renders them useless, providing card advantage. And finally, it feels very cool imagining that you're a powerful wizard living in such an awesome tower. Change of perspective!
Yeah.
So there you go. Our draw engine is Grid powered by Ivory Towers. Besides that, our must-have one-off Library of Alexandria. And because of this combination, something very curious and crazy happens. This deck wants to start the game on the draw. You heard right. Even if you win the roll and get to decide, choose to draw. Isn't it nice to play a control deck that wants the opponent to start? This is a deck with respect and good manners. You're going to hate to play against it, but good manners.
And how does it end the game? Does it concede because good manners?
No. No. It kills you in a horrifying way. slowly with inevitable pain and suffering. And then spikes come out of the wall and your heart goes crazy and...
So it's a standard Underworld Dream skill, right?
Right. Change of perspective. So there are many reasons why I choose Underworld Dreams to be the executioner of this deck. Executioner. How do you pronounce it? Executioner. So there are many reasons why I choose Underworld Dreams to be the executioner of this deck. But the most important one is good manners.
What?
Yeah, good manners. You don't kill your opponents, they actually kill themselves.
Actually, that's true.
Change of perspective. The most important reason why I wanted to forget my lines, the most important reason why I chose Underworld Dreams is because I wanted to have a very strong endgame. But what makes a deck having a very strong endgame? Inevitability. After analyzing every old school card legal in Swedish, I came to the conclusion that the most dangerous late game card in the entire format is Underworld Dreams. Once it resolves, there's literally nothing you can do to protect yourself against it. You need to draw cards. Period. It's not like you can decide to block it with creatures or just decide to stop drawing. Your only defense is to play Disenchants, Nevinyrral's Discs, or to cross your fingers so you draw your one-off Chaos Orb, hoping its effect resolves, and then flip it like a boss. However, not everybody likes playing white for Disenchant, and the only competitive deck that could abuse playing Nevinyrral's Disc is Disco Troll. So at the end of the day, Underworld Dreams sticks. Not only it provides an inevitable way of killing, but it also punishes certain decks for refilling their hands with Wheel of Fortune or Time Twister. Ancestral Recall becomes quite painful, and opposing Library of Alexandria increases your clock. And of course, it annoys the hell out of any deck that uses Winds of Change. The only problem, it costs 3 black mana.
Is it really a problem in this deck?
Not at all.
So, how many copies should we play?
What the hell? Let's have a look at the full deck list already. And then I will be like... okay! And then I will be like... Dun, 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 dun. Nikki, why are you not playing Magic? Play Magic! So we get to finally have a look at the deck list of the black and white control that I would play. This is definitely my suggestion, and I've been testing it for a while, and I believe this is as consistent as it can be with just 2 colors. The main card, as you can imagine, is Word of Command. Being Word of Command, the main reason why I decided to create the deck in the first place. But let's have a look at the overview. The overview shows that we have 4 Ivory Towers. These are particularly important because this deck is slow. It doesn't have access to blue, which means no access to Ancestral Recall or any other draw card effects very early in the game, so we need to survive. But they are particularly strong against the first creatures that appear in the battlefield, and it is mostly the core of the entire deck. Reason being that afterwards we have our 3 Greed. This is going to be our draw engine during the mid game and late game, and it gets really crazy, really fast, really crazy, drawing 3 cards per turn, not caring about the 6 lives that we would lose because we will gain them back right after in the next upkeep. As you can see here, we also have the Kill, which is the Underworld Dreams, and we don't really need to play too many of them. Just 1 in the mid game already starts annoying our opponents really badly and mostly disables cards like Time Twister and Wheel of Fortune, and it makes Library of Alexandria and Ancestral Recall very painful. That's very beneficial for us because if we can prevent our opponents from drawing cards, that's awesome, because the only way we can draw cards is literally with Greed and Ivory Tower. So if we don't have access to that, at least we can prevent the opponents from getting ahead. Of course, 3 Abyss Usually I play 2 copies in the deck, but having, once again, no access to early draw, and I'm guessing that 3 copies is good enough, and I've been testing it and it's really good enough because we really want to draw them, and if they get countered, we play them again. So very, very useful card. In addition to these, I decided to include one mode because after several iterations of gold fishing with this deck, I recognized that we really want to have everything against creatures in our main deck. Then afterwards we can really focus our game if we want to play against control and mid-range, but it is very important for this deck to be ready against aggro in general, and I believe that Mishra's Factory could be a problem, and this card disables them, which is very nice. Of course we have our one-of must have Chaos Orb, and hopefully we will flip it correctly. And then it comes to our protection area. Our protection area displays the best removal ever printed, which I believe is Disenchant. This card is so powerful that it can destroy any artifact or enchantment, and this is the main reason for including white, because otherwise we would be having a very bad time destroying opposing enchantments. But with this, we're safe. In addition to that, the Swords to Plowshares, which are incredibly good in order to keep creatures at bay, and those annoying creatures that regenerate also as well. Being our only problematic creature, Black Knight in this case, from the usual suspects, but considering that we also have access to the Abyss, and I guess it's okay. But nevertheless, we will have also other protection against Black Knight, as you can see here. But let's move on. Moving on to additional artifact removal, we have Divine Offerings, and Divine Offerings are extremely good as well to facilitate a little bit of life gain to survive in the early turns, and also has somewhat synergy with Greed, can give us something like 1 or 2 extra cards just for the trade. We also have Balance, which is not a very desirable card to play against many matchups, but it really is necessary against certain matchups, especially the fastest ones, where we just want to pay 2 mana and that's it. Just restart the game with the creatures, with the opposing creatures, in case we don't draw our Swords to Plowshares or Mace of Iths in the early game. And sometimes some decks, they just overcommit a lot of creatures, and this is a disaster for them if we are able to play one Balance. We have our Demonic Tutor, which allows us to find any card that we may need. Surprisingly, and most of the time, I found myself searching for Mace of Iths very often, and at the same time Ivory Towers, which tends to be the core of the deck. And these 2 cards, Ivory Tower together with Mace of Ith, they really give us so much time to survive that we find every other piece necessary, and it just annoys our opponents and just gives us the game. So Demonic Tutor in this case most of the time means Ivory Tower or Mace of Ith. So we also have Mind Twist, which is very strong against mid-range and control decks, and we will play it in the right moment, don't worry, because I believe we won't be investing a lot of mana to just let it be countered, and the reason for that is the reason why I created the deck, which is Word of Command. Initially I started playing with 4, but in the metagame that I have, there is literally too much aggro, and sometimes this card is not very good against aggro because they just tap out anyway constantly, and we cannot trick the opponent into doing things they don't want to. But it shines really against mid-range and especially control, because we get to decide when the things have to happen, and we get to watch the hand, to see the hands of the opponents, and in most cases I've seen my opponents just counterspell it because they don't want to show what they have in their hands. And once that you see it, you know if you can play cards like Mind Twist or, for example, Underworld Dreams. And of course you're protecting yourself with Greed and Card Advantage and so on. So I can really tell that Word of Command is the core when it comes to strategy in this deck, and I will not throw it away. You will see 3 copies here, 1 extra copy in the sideboard, because it really is that good against control. It really is. Like, once that you start playing it, you understand why it is so strong, and on second hand, why other people are not playing it. But nevertheless, moving on, we have the one-off Feldonscane, and this is dedicated to the deck, because the whole strategy of black and white control is really just play, draw go, draw go, draw go, do nothing against the deck. Eventually we can play an ivory tower and start drawing cards only if we want to, and if you accomplish this state, you just start playing Underworld Dreams and the deck dies, literally, because obviously before you play any Underworld Dreams, you fish out the disenchants and the counter spells with Word of Command, and it really works that well. However, if the only thing that you accomplish is to fish every counter spell and disenchant that you can, but they still have even more, at the end of the day, the finisher is the Feldonscane. When they have already drawn so many cards, and you as well, but you just reshuffle your library with your graveyard, but they don't. So you just start passing the turns, keep your Mace of Iths active against the Mistras Factory, and your Ivory Towers high enough so that you don't get fireballed. And that's pretty much it. This is how you win, basically by saying go, you win against the deck. This deck wins approximately 90% of the time against the deck, and I'm not kidding. I've tested this and I feel very sad because the deck is my favorite deck, but at the same time a little bit happier because I just designed this deck myself. So yeah, things are 50-50 here. Speaking about 50-50, the card that breaks the 50-50 symmetry, drawing more cards than the opponent, of course it needed to be here. So Library of Alexandria is included as well, and I don't need to give any explanation for that. But what I will give is why I only included 1 Mox Black, 1 Mox White, and the usual Black Lotus and Soul Ring. So the reason why I chose explicitly only 2 Moxes is because I don't need extra mana, I don't need extra tempo, and what I need is the cards that I need, which are the ones that you mostly see 4 copies of each or 3 copies of each, because they are extremely important in this deck. So I don't really need that boost of tempo, but it is very well appreciated to have these 2 cards instead of just lands, because sometimes black and white are very important for me, but not other colors. So this is why I only included these ones. Moving on to the lands, we can see that I am playing 4 scrub lands, obviously super important, and because of the need of white color at the same time as black in some cases, I added 1 City of Brass, which was not there originally, but since the inclusion of mode double white, it started to be a little bit complicated to cast it, so I needed to increase my number of white sources. Then we move on to our 10 swamps. You can see here only 6 beta swamps, and I'm waiting. I already ordered 4 beta swamps that will arrive eventually, probably in the next week or 2 weeks, and this will complete the deck, which is really nice. I really dig these beta swamps. I love the art. It makes me feel like this is a terrible place to be, a swamp where you really don't want to enter. And I have the feeling opponents playing against this deck will have the same feeling. So I like this deck. I like those swamps, this art. And finally, we conclude with the 2 planes that are obviously necessary to provide white color that we may need, and the 1 of Strip Mine, because I also believe it is very important to destroy primarily the Library of Alexandria of our opponents, but in general it is also a very nice card to use in tricky situations where opponents have 2 blue mana open, then you just destroy 1 land, go to combat, they don't have mana to counter exactly what you wanted to cast, which is these Underworld Dreams or something like that. Yeah, so basically this is the list. I guess it's worth it to have a look at the sideboard. So this is my suggestion for the sideboard, together with the suggestion of the main deck list. And obviously, like we already discussed before, We have the extra copy of Word of Command. This is going to make us have 4 copies after the sideboard, and this is extremely good against control, extremely good against certain situations like blue, white, red tempo, where they have swords to plowshares that they cannot use against you, but it's just sitting on their hand, and you can use those swords to plowshares, for example, to kill their own Savannah Lions and stuff like this. We continue with the Divine Offerings because artifacts are very, very represented. Like, there's a lot of artifacts in my current meta, and what could be best than having extra defense against it, and together with that, just gaining life by destroying them. Because of the same reasons, I added 2 extra Dust to Dust. I didn't want to add more than 2 because it costs double white, and it's also a sorcery, but the upside of it is that we get to remove 2 artifacts, and they are removed from the game. But nevertheless, it's dangerous in this deck to have double white. I didn't want to play too many copies of it because of that, mostly because the deck is very, very black, so to say. Extra removal against creatures because the early turns are very critical, and if we don't find the proper removals in time, then this is not going to work out. And I'm very happy, I'm proud that I can use 2 copies of Terror because I made an insight video about it, discussing whether this card is unrepresented, but obviously it makes no sense to use it in certain scenarios. At least having 2 copies in the sideboard can be very, very good against certain matchups like Zoo, for example, or blue, white, red tempo. Very well. So moving on, this is the card that I'm not very certain about, the Circle of Protection red, although it is very good against some matchups, like for example Atok, being able to prevent so much burn damage to our faces, while at the same time every single attack from Atok can be prevented with just paying 1 mana. This is very good, very good. But I still need to test it because I'm not really sure if we could, for example, improve something else with this card slot. Let it be, for example, a Meek Stone. I've been considering using Meek Stone instead of this particular slot, but let's see. Let's test this list for now and let's move on. We have the obvious inclusion of Wrath of God, and once again only 1 because it's double white, and it could be very difficult to cast within this with this deck because it's mainly black. But hey, if we make it to double white and we happen to need it, this is an amazing extra removal for creatures. It just gets rid of all of them, and our deck has literally no creatures, or well, yeah, almost no creatures. Let's pass over those Hypnotic Spectres for just a second and show up the second copy of Feldon's Cane. Why is this so important? Because we want to send a message. We want to send the message that the deck cannot win against this deck. And so if the whole strategy from them is to deal with our single copy of Feldon's Cane, adding a second copy of Feldon's Cane just makes it barely impossible. It's like almost impossible for the deck to win. And other decks that try to play the long game or try to mill you as well, it's just not going to be possible. And I'm very happy of including this card because also I'm not seeing people playing it, but in this deck it really makes sense. And speaking about making sense, what about playing decks that don't have creatures? And then your Abyss, your Moat, and many other cards stop making sense, but your Hypnotic Spectres start making even more sense. Considering that the opponents know that you have no creatures, bringing in these 4 guys, if you have watched the video about the usual suspects, you know this is probably one of the most dangerous creatures on the offense, and having for granted, so considering that we have most of our mana sources are black, double black in this case, it's no problem to cast. And replacing those copies of Abyss and Moat, or if we could even leave the Moat if we see that creatures are only on the ground, but replacing those copies of the Abyss and probably 1 Swords to Plowshares or 1 Mace of Ith for 4 copies of Hypnotic Spectre, this also gives headaches to control decks. This is exactly what we want to do. We want to troll control decks as much as we can because dudes, I really think this is the most devastating control deck I've ever created so far. I just sit down, do literally nothing, and I play destroying the plans of my opponents with Word of Command, and destroying every other kind of permanent that they resolve with Disenchant, Swords to Plowshares, Divine Offerings, and so on and so on. Well, that's so far it, and I'm super looking forward to your feedback. Just let me know if you believe any of the cards or slots from the sideboard should be replaced for something else, something more creative, something more devastating. Or if you already like the deck and you would like to try it, just let me know if you tried it, let me know if you played it and if it was as devastating as I can experience that it has been, at least for me. So this concludes the section from the main deck and the sideboard of the black and white control deck. Let's move on to the next part. So this was it for me, guys. So if you really like it, please let me know in the comments below. If you think it doesn't fit to this kind of videos or old school context, let me know, because it's a lot of work. And honestly, the reason why I'm doing this is because I'm learning how to use this new camera. And if this had a little bit of quality, then I'm glad that I could offer this for you. If you liked it, please thumbs up and subscribe, obviously, because it's going to help a lot for me to get a little bit of support if I ever make it to the 1000 subscribers. But nevertheless, the most important thing is that I had a lot of fun designing this new deck. The follow-up of this is that definitely I will try to test this deck. I will definitely record those videos and I will upload them afterwards, so you can tell me whether this works. If you think that some of the cards should be replaced, let me know as well, because I'm totally open to suggestions. And that's it. See you in the next one.